Did you guys hear that woke is back? I can't believe it. Last night, the election happened, and, well, I can totally believe it, because this is exactly what I've been predicting. Less than a year of Donald Trump has led to many Americans, even in Republican plus 10 point, Republican plus 20 point areas, has seen a strong shift to the Dems. A strong shift blue. And mind you, that's only after less than a year of Donald Trump in office, of Republicans controlling everything, of the Republicans having nobody they can reasonably blame for their failings but themselves, because there are no Democrats in power in the majority, or there weren't, that they could blame on things. And because this wasn't the midterms, there, in a lot of ways still aren't, the Republicans are still holding a vast majority of power in our federal government, but this is going to be significant on a local level, especially considering some of the policies that won elections, such as the redistricting of California, which succeeded in its vote, meaning that California will be matching Texas and I think Florida on their gerrymandering nonsense and finding a way to add more seats to the table for blue representatives. It's pretty awesome. And then, of course, you've got Zohran Mamdani winning in New York City, and winning by a lot. Like, more than 10% he won by. He kicked Cuomo's ass. He shoved the stuffing up Cuomo's ass and made him into Thanksgiving dinner, and then ate him up. That is what we saw, man. That was what last night was. The chud malding was immaculate. It was hilarious, and it was very fun. I had a really good time last night watching the election results roll in. And I think a lot of you guys did too, and I really do feel like since last night, the vibes have been different. I can tell you I'm in a really good mood about it. I clearly am in a pretty good mood about it. I know that you guys have been pretty hype. I've noticed a lot more activity in my Discord, on the channel, in the comments. It really seems like the left has gone from being, I guess, spending the last 10 months kind of in a stasis of doomerism to a spark of hope. People are starting to see that there isn't hopelessness, that America's not just going to fall in line with Trump no matter how bad he gets, that we are finally starting to see America realize they fucked around and they're finding out, and they don't want to fuck around anymore. The doomerism is now being replaced by a strong sense of catharsis, and I think that is exactly what we all needed right now. And you know what also helps? The rage coming out of the right. Oh man, it's so funny. Hold on, let me tell you that I knew that we were winning. I knew that shit was going to go well when I saw this tweet. When I saw this, I knew we had it locked in. From MAGA Voice, Democrats are stealing the elections in New Jersey and Pennsylvania right now. This is absolutely ridiculous. Get loud, MAGA. Stay mad. Stay mad. Now, after 10 months of Trump, what do you think's gonna happen in the midterms, MAGA Voice? What do you think is coming? AI-generated PFP? Indeed it is. What do you think is coming in the midterms after this? What's this tell you? What do you think is coming in the next general election after this? Don't think we're gonna get that Trump 2028 you guys keep calling for. By the way, I love how much the remaining Trump supporters have become blatantly fascist. Like, their go-to spam that they post now is Trump 2028. Like, they don't even pretend as if they don't want to destroy the concept of democracy, term limits, rules for how the country functions on a fundamental level. Anyway, folks, are you guys ready to see the absolute peak that are the results of this election? The blue sweep that is leaving MAGA and Republicans seething. I hope you are. I brought up this Philly D video that he just dropped. I didn't even realize he dropped this until after I started stream, but I know my boy Philly D never goes wrong with the news coverage, so fill me in, Philly D.
Democrats destroyed the Republicans last night. I thought maybe Democrats had forgotten how to win. Democrats dominated Election Day. And now you've got people asking, can this...
Yeah! Can we just take a moment? Can we just take a moment? Like, this feels like how I felt after, like, the year after Avengers Infinity War came out. Like, if you were an MCU fan when Infinity War came out, you guys, there was nothing else like it. It was like an entire fandom was depressed for an entire year. And then they announced Endgame, and they dropped the trailer for it and everything. And people started to go from being depressed to happy again because of how, obviously, depressing Infinity War's ending voting was. It reminds me a lot of that. Like, I'm seeing a genuine spark of excitement in people again, and going from such a low point of people dooming over Trump to this high point, it's such a massive switch up. It's like night and day, and I love it.
Momentum carry on through to next year, especially as Donald Trump and the Republicans are doing everything they can to stay in power. But first, we got to talk about the results starting in New York, right, where you had Zohran Mamdani winning just over 50% of the more than 2 million ballots that were cast, more than Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa combined.
I wasn't even the slightest bit surprised by this result, by the way. When Zohran Mamdani won the primary, I more or less wrote him down as like I basically started considering him already the mayor of New York. Like, there's no way there's no way that an independent who is opposed to more hardcore pro-progressive ideals is going to win in a landscape where basically a centrist, like a hardcore centrist like Cuomo, is going to win in this landscape. What New Yorkers clearly wanted, and it's been obvious through the entire election cycle, was they wanted a hardcore person. They want someone who stands by their beliefs, who actually wants to fight for something. And of course, it shouldn't surprise you at all that Curtis Sliwa had absolutely no chance, not even a little bit. But, clearly there is a little bit of desire for a more centrist, not progressive candidate like Cuomo, but Mamdani took it home. He really, really did.
And in fact, he won more votes there than any candidate since 1969. But that's also not where history ends, because he's going to be the city's youngest mayor since 1892, as well as its first.
Seriously, something New York needs right now. Dude, imagine if under Mamdani, New York sees substantial housing cost drops. That alone is going to be something that's going to be hard for Republicans to poke holes in. If Mamdani succeeds in making transportation and housing cheaper and easier in New York City, that's like 80% of what New Yorkers care about dealt with.
Muslim mayor and first mayor of South Asian descent. And so with all of that, and in the face of Donald Trump getting more and more involved and making threats, yes, you had Mamdani celebrating his victory, but he also pushed back against Donald Trump.
Here, we believe in standing up for those we love. Whether you are an immigrant, a member of the trans community, one of the many black women that Donald Trump has fired from a federal job, a single mom still waiting for the cost of groceries to go down, or any...
I love how the right popularized that the groceries are so expensive talking point during Biden's run, and then they immediately caused the cost of things like groceries and utilities to skyrocket during his administration. So everyone's thinking groceries, everyone's thinking cost of living. Obviously, everyone's always thinking that, but everyone's focused on it as a political point. And then Trump's terrible policy directly causes Americans to have to pay substantially more for all of these things, while also making far less during his presidency. It definitely feels like Americans are starting to feel... It really does seem like Americans are starting to feel the economy right now. We already know statistically that Americans are really bad off right now after just 10 months, 11 months of Trump, but I think we're really going to start to see the anger broil up. It's enough now to start swinging elections, but I don't think we're even at this, this is not the effect having taken full hold yet. This is just the beginning. This is very much just the beginning. This is the broiling of discontent at the Republicans and Trump starting to show its face. It is going to keep coming out. It is going to keep growing. Don't mistake yourself into thinking that this is the cap. This is the start of something big.
Anyone else with their back against the wall, if anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him.
Hell yeah. That was a bar.
And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power.
Fuck yeah.
This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one.
That is such good rhetoric. Mamdani's really good rhetoric-wise. A big part of his focus is, we're not just going to stop Trump. We are going to stop the turmoil that made people so panicked and unhappy with their situation that they were willing to go to someone like Trump with the hope that things would get better. We're going to make things better so people don't want to vote for the next Trump is such a good strategy. That is such a good rhetorical strategy.
So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
Right, and with that, you had many Democrats and left-wing figures celebrating, and that including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who also really highlighted what was so standout about Mamdani's victory.
He had to not just defeat a Republican, he had to defeat a Republican and the old guard of the Democratic Party at the same time. He was fighting a war on 2 fronts and not just one. And he still won resoundingly. And I think the message that that sends is that the Democratic Party cannot last much longer by denying the future, by...
This is very true. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I would take AOC's word on this very seriously. If I'm not mistaken, is AOC not literally the world's most popular politician? Like, obviously within her own district, her constituents love her, and she's very popular. But I think proportionally, she is literally the most popular politician in the world. Like, no politician is seen as less of a mixed bag than AOC globally. It was the last time I heard the relevant stat.
Trying to undercut our young, by trying to undercut a next generation of diverse and upcoming Democrats that have the parties, the actual party, our actual electorate and voter support.
And regarding what's next and those kind of in the old guard, she said,
we have a future to plan for. We have a future to fight for. And we're either going to do that together or you're going to be left behind. And I think that that is not a partisan issue. It's not about progressive. It's not moderate. It's not liberal. This is about, do you understand the assignment of fighting fascism right now? And the assignment is to come together across difference no matter what.
Right, but then jump into the West Coast, you had California, and there you had voters overwhelmingly approving Prop 50, which was the ballot measure.
Like, I do think that the ideal future of the left would be a lot more cohesion around goals, right? Obviously, we don't want bad actors to ferment within the leftist spaces and progressive spaces, and you don't want that stuff to get big and start having too much influence, stuff like tanky nonsense and what have you. But I will say that we do need to have a certain level of, like, targeted focus. I'll say that my biggest issue with other progressives, the areas where I don't find myself having an easy time working together, quote-unquote, is when we don't actually have the same goal in mind, right? Like, a lot of progressive figures online these days are not in favor of voting a Democrat into office unless they are someone like Mamdani. If it's someone like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, they will not advocate for or put their strong support behind that candidate. And fundamentally, I think what I want to see more from the left is, even if you don't principally agree with a given candidate, at the very least, if they are preferable to the other, you cast your vote for the preferable candidate. Preferable doesn't mean they are who you like the most, it's who you would prefer to the other. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people on the left who will look you dead in the eye and say they don't prefer one over the other. To them, the Republican and the Democrat are just the same. The Democrat is just and this is a popular term, unfortunately, among a lot of leftists these days, liberal fascist. Not a big fan of that phrase, but, you know, there's a lot to decode there.
That will allow temporary redrawing of congressional districts in a way that should give Democrats 5 more seats in the House. And that, of course, is in response to and expected to now offset the 5 seats that Republicans are likely to pick up thanks to Texas's mid-decade gerrymander. Though, of course, that's not where it's expected to end. Several other Republican states, including Missouri and North Carolina, are poised to follow suit as Trump's continued his unprecedented effort to mold Congress to his liking. So that's why with this, you had California Governor Gavin Newsom not only celebrating his victory, but explicitly calling on other states, including Colorado, Illinois, and Maryland, to follow his lead. And then actually, adding to that, today you had the chairman of the Democratic National Committee vowing that his party would match Republican redistricting efforts.
We've leveled the playing field, and now it's up to Republicans. If they continue with this nonsense and continue going down this road of trying to redistrict, unconstitutionally redistrict in Republican-controlled states, we're going to meet them state by state.
Now from there, we've then got to go to Virginia, where Democrats won every statewide contest. They flipped 13 seats.
Winning Virginia is crazy. Now, granted, these are bigger cities. They would be more likely to go Dem, but Virginia is just generally not the place you expect to see go blue. Especially when you consider, like, I'm really curious to see how they do midterm-wise. The midterms are going to be really interesting for Virginia. I am really interested to see how Virginia goes in the midterms, how blue and how red it ends up being. I think it's going to be indicative of a lot. And then, of course, who knows? If things go real purple or really blue in the midterms, and we see like a substantial amount of blue districts in the midterms in Virginia and some of these other states, it's very likely we're going to see some purple and red states possibly flip blue in the next general in 2028.
In the state legislature to win their biggest majority in nearly 40 years. And that as former Representative Abigail Spanberger won the governor's race by 15 points to become the state's first female governor. In fact, even Jay Jones, the Democratic nominee for Attorney General, won his race despite that scandal involving violent text messages that he sent back in 2022 about his political opponent. And then finally for Virginia, you had Ghazala Hashmi. She's projected to be Virginia's lieutenant governor, which will make her the first Muslim woman elected statewide. Right, and then we jumped to New Jersey, where you had current Representative Mikey Sherrill getting the win by roughly 13 points, beating out former state assembly member Jack Ciattarelli, who also, I'll say this is a big thing, came within 3 points of victory back in 2021. But then with all that, there's still the question of, well, where do Dems go from here? Mamdani is progressive politics, got him the win in New York, but Spanberger and Sherrill, they're way closer to the center, and that obviously worked out just fine for them in their states. And so then
well, it's a matter of know your target, right? Like, obviously, Mamdani was going to have a lot more pull in a progressive place like New York, where, like, the floor of conservatism is much, much higher, or much more left, right? Like the floor of that Overton window, or I guess the rightmost of that Overton window, is pretty left, right? So the leftmost part of the Overton window, or the more left parts, it's a lot easier to, sell people on that. Whoa, the bitrate dropped? One moment. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I went ahead and opened my blinds so I can see how the weather is out there. And it's definitely not looking pretty. But I do see birds flying around. There are birds flying and fighting the wind up there. They're kind of flying away in that, holy shit, a disaster is coming kind of way. So, let's hope there's no fucking power outage from this goddamn storm. Oh, I'm scared. My power's gonna get knocked out by a hurricane. Anyway. That said, let's continue.
With that, you have some saying that this is setting up a battle over who defines the party. So again, quick thing, I'm just gonna inject my opinion here. I did this yesterday. Outside of a national election, you don't need to run a singular thing. Different strokes for different folks, though there is a certain area of overlap. And that's gonna be, or at least it should be, populist ideas like affordability and cost of living. And to that point, Mamdani, Spanberger, and Sherrill focused on affordability and the cost of living in their campaigns, while also going after Trump. But again, the Trump stuff is also after Trump. Trump bad isn't by itself a winning campaign. Well, anecdotal though I see stories like this popping up online, anything that I've gone to in person, it's been a lot of people yelling at representatives, tell us what you're going to do for us other than them bad. Though, that aside, I will say that Republicans, right now, they're doing everything they can to make Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party. Though that also as they blatantly mischaracterize his views. In fact, just last week, the National Republican Congressional Committee, they sent around a memo claiming that Hakeem Jeffries' last-minute endorsement of Mamdani was evidence that the Democratic Party had been hijacked by leftist radicals.
I love how much the Republicans have had to cope around this. A lot of them have been leaning on this claim that Mamdani's not very popular outside of New York City. And technically that is true. If Mamdani was running in a lot of other parts of the country, he probably wouldn't have won. Or if he did win, he wouldn't have won with such a lead like he did. However, I don't think that's all that relevant. The fact is that the Democrats are starting to better identify the politics of certain parts of the country. America is a hodgepodge of different people with different objectives. You know, your city liberals are going to be a lot more in favor of green energy, for instance, than your Virginian rural folks who perhaps have a couple of family members who rely on the coal industry for a career. A lot of towns in Virginia rely on the coal industry, in fact. West Virginia in particular, Virginia to an extent, like Western Virginia. But, yeah, like these are very much like rural states that rely on agriculture, mining, and just industries that you don't typically associate with their workers siding with the left and their hard regulation or hardline regulation policies. And yet, it's very possible they end up swinging more progressive this time around if the Democrats know how to target these demographics. Like, sure, you don't want to send in a Democratic Socialist to appeal to a district in, West Virginia, but you can definitely send in somebody who is progressive, clearly a Democrat, and knows what issues those groups are facing and how to advocate for them, and where not to necessarily go too left with their rhetoric, as they might disenfranchise too many voters and not end up winning the election. Who truly believes states like West Virginia or Kentucky would go blue? It really depends. You never know. A lot of Trump's policies could very well end up hampering industries that these states rely on. Just because Trump's virtue signals about these industries doesn't mean he's not hurting them.
And adding, Mamdani is a socialist hostile to America, supports an agenda ripped directly from the pages of the Communist Manifesto, is openly anti-police, and is funded by groups with ties to terrorist organizations. But I'll say, the mischaracterization aside, the ludicrous stuff aside, and there was really no shortage of it going into the election, and we're going to continue seeing stuff. The Mamdani factor and how it plays, especially going into the midterms, it's likely going to be dependent on how he performs in New York, right? What is he able to accomplish? If he's not able to accomplish certain things or he fails places, will people blame him, or will there be other factors? Right? And I say that in part because Donald Trump has made threat after threat regarding money in New York if Mamdani were to be elected. So actually, Trump may have run the risk of insulating Mamdani from any sort of judgment for failures because they might see it as, the president of the United States, making him public enemy number one. But again,
that's a good point. Maybe, if Mamdani does fuck up in some areas or just isn't able to meet expectations in some ways, which any politician will inevitably do, it might not hit him as hard as it would other politicians because Trump's outright said, "I'm gonna do everything to try and get in your way." Not a good tactic, Trump. You've kind of given him some plausible deniability.
And as I mentioned, New York, it matters, but it wasn't the only thing. And like I mentioned yesterday, there was also a special election in Texas to fill a seat previously held by a Democrat who died back in March. So there you had 2 Democrats advancing to a runoff for that seat. And then in Pennsylvania, 3 Democrats kept their spots on the state Supreme Court. And that, while it got a lot less attention, is absolutely huge because it could play a role in the next presidential election if certain voting and redistricting questions end up on their docket. Also,
remember, these wins also are going to make it substantially harder to steal the election in the future for Republicans, especially the general election. Maine voters approve red flag gun law. As someone who is pro-gun, red flag laws are just good. They are just good. You can be pro-gun, you can be pro-gun ownership, and be in favor of gun control policy. My line is usually when it comes to banning certain things from any kind of ownership at all. You straight up can't have a thing no matter what. I really, really prefer policy like this. Things that create loopholes to jump through and make it harder for a criminal or someone who's clearly ill-intentioned to legally acquire a firearm with too much ease. And of course, you've got your safe storage laws and other policy that I am behind. You guys probably know me as the pro-gun progressive guy, but that also means I'm in favor of plenty of gun control law.
In Maine, voters approved a new red flag law, giving families the option to petition a judge to order weapons to be temporarily taken away from a troubled relative. That notably coming 2 years after a gunman killed 18 people at a bar and a bowling alley in the worst shooting in the state's history. And then
Oh, that's a very handy thing. Being able to have a gun temporarily withheld from a relative upon, like, from the order of a judge, and it's just a temporary thing. That's a very good thing to exist. Holy crap, I've never heard of a policy like that, but that's very good. I like that a lot. For those who don't know, firearms are the #1 most used thing for suicide, and suicides by firearm make up the vast majority of firearm deaths, if I'm not mistaken. So it is a very good thing that if you know that someone in your family is going through some shit, you can just contact a court in Maine and have their firearm temporarily taken from them so that they don't do anything crazy. Hey, Dark Brandon in YouTube chat. Lol, react to the video clown. We want you to react. We will not strike it down. Dark Brandon, we already reacted to the video. You fucking scammer. Stop scamming boomers and do something of meaning. Hire some actual artists. Hire some actual voice actors. Hire some animators. You've got the money for it. We know you're making bank. Hire some real people and produce some real content, my friend. You don't want to react to it because you're going to look like a fool on a live stream. We did react to it. Victoria, how are you doing? Thank you for the 160 Aussie dollars. Holy shit. Oh my god. Good lord, how much does that even translate to in USD? I don't know. I'm just curious. 160 Aussie dollars? Holy crap, thank you. Jesus Christ. You are immensely generous. Apparently at the current exchange rate, it's like 104, but I'm just going to up that to 105, round it up, because you're just so based. God damn. Thank you. You are extremely kind, my friend. Much appreciated. Very based. Run along now, Dark Brandon. Wow, unsubbing right now. So disappointed in your reaction. It isn't AI slop and you look salty and dumb. You're gonna get fucking roasted in chat, dog. Everyone here recognizes it as AI slop. You're just announcing that you're a boomer and you can't recognize such things. Anyway, back to the topic at hand.
Finally, we talk about my now home state of Georgia, where you had Democrats flipping 2 seats on the Georgia Public Service Commission, which is not only the first time that the party has won a statewide constitutional office since 2006, but also it's a huge deal for reasons that we've talked about on this show. It's basically all about keeping big energy companies from running the show and potentially locking in higher rates for everyday Americans for years to come. But also, with everything that we're seeing, you had Trump and Republicans trying to downplay Republican losses, or with Trump going on to blame the government shutdown as
No, Trump wasn't just trying to play down Republican losses. Trump was melting down on Truth Social. He went from coping about it to very quickly saying, "So it begins," in all caps. Did anyone else see that post from him? Unhinged. I thought you'd be scared. Dark Brandon, why would I be scared? You're a guy producing slop with an AI text-to-voice thing. Brother, why would I be scared?
Well as the absence of his own name on the ballot. He then also, and I think this shows how embarrassed and desperate and scared he is, he repeated his call for Republicans to get rid of the filibuster, saying of Democrats, if we do what
Trump is scared, that's for sure. He is definitely scared. I think he realizes now, oh god, 10 months in. A single 10 months in, not even 1 year, and Americans are rejecting MAGA. They're rejecting conservatism, and they want to go for someone like Mamdani over Trump. Something worth noting is that politics is getting a lot less middle of the road. People are getting more radical. Those on the left and those on the right are shifting more to the left and more to the right, getting more radical on both ends. And as we start to see the pendulum shift to the left, it's not going to be a shift to, like, super centrist, basic, like, you know, standard left-wing stuff. I feel we're going to see a swing much further to the left in favor of reformist policy that's going to actually make things different. Like, start to make things look a lot more positive for Americans' lives.
I'm saying they'll most likely never attain power because we will have passed every single thing that you can imagine. And all of this is today when he was hosting a breakfast at the White House with Republican senators, he continued to spread baseless claims about election fraud, right? Accusing Dems of cheating, claiming mail-in ballots are automatically corrupt.
We should pass voter ID. We should pass no mail-in voting. We should pass all the things that we want to pass, make our elections secure and safe.
And then adding to that,
So this is what I'm talking about when I say they want to rig the next election, and these W's that we just got last night are going to make that a lot harder. Their goal is going to try to be to prevent Democrats from getting their ballots cast at all. Dude, Dark Brandon is mauling in chat. He keeps on demanding that I cover his video. For those unaware, we already did. It was the first segment of the stream. He's just spurging out, as they would say.
You also had White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt claiming that preparations for another executive order on elections were underway. And so, with all this, I'd love to hear your thoughts, opinions, and reactions, but where I'll end this, and this is me putting on my opinion hat again. Enjoy the win, enjoy remembering what hope felt like, but also know you have an old, desperate, sad, embarrassed president who's really willing to try anything. He's not calling for the...
I really do think we're going to see him ramp up his moves to try and destroy democracy now. I think he realizes now that, like, America is not going to eat up every bit of shit he shovels in their mouth like they used to. They did up until the election. They were convinced by the idea that Biden was causing all of their problems, but he wasn't. Biden was, without a doubt, undisputably, the best president of our lifetimes. Any of our lifetimes. The best president. His policy was game-changing. He literally... was the most pro-union, pro-worker president we've ever had. He passed the biggest infrastructure bill in U.S. history, and if it was still in place and Trump hadn't shot it down upon taking office, we would see more money going to repairing the famously crumbling infrastructure, which already itself wasn't built up enough, of the United States. We would have seen its biggest upgrade in the country's history. He dropped the price of insulin for seniors and people with medical conditions down to like $40 per vial or something. It was like $30 or $40 per vial, down from like 100 or 250 or something crazy like that. 450, I think it was. Like, I could go on, and these are just policies that I remember from years ago of covering his actions. Trump managed to convince Americans that that president was ruining their lives, was responsible for every single thing they blew up out of proportion. And now that Trump's in office, the guy who claimed, I'm gonna solve all these problems, I'll be a dictator on day one just to show you how quickly me in charge solves all the problems. And here we are, 10 months in, and things are worse than ever. Trump shot himself in the foot here, and I think he realizes now his only path out of the hell that he's created for himself is to destroy democracy, destroy mail-in voting, put in place voter ID laws that specifically target POC, make it harder for the demographics that most frequently vote Democrat to vote at all. Things like that. Just destroy democracy. That's his only path now. I think he knows that, and I think that's going to become his top priority. I think we all know he's going to run in 2028. If he can't run in 2028, as if that's a concept that we could all imagine anymore, he'll still try. We all know he'll still try. We all know his supporters will write his name in. It's going to be crazy. But I think Trump, when he realizes he hasn't won, or that he can't be president again, he's going to have a meltdown, the likes of which will make American history. Our great-great-grandkids will be reading in history books about the great Trump meltdown, the great presidential crash out of 2028. I guess it would be 2029, because that would be when they certify, and he loses his shit.
The end of the filibuster from a place of strength. They just got beaten these elections. His polling's horrible. Eyes forward and on to the next. And then there's more we're gonna dive in.
Love me some Philly D. That was a very, very good bit of coverage of those election results. Very, very solid. Good shit, Philly D. I'm glad to see you doing some of the best news content on the platform. That is what I like from him. He doesn't really give a lot of opinion to it. He usually asks people watching for their opinion, which is kind of why his stuff is kind of perfect for this format, because I do, in fact, give my thoughts. But, of course, highly recommend you go check out Philip DeFranco. If you somehow don't know who he is, I would be shocked. I would be quite shocked if you didn't know about Philly D. But I really think this is a time for us to start turning our frowns upside down. I've tried to tell you guys not to be doomer about the state of politics for a while, but you guys, a lot of you would doomer anyway. And it's like, come on, I know that things are bad, but this is the time for us to lock in harder than ever. And, you know, we got a big mess to clean up. You know, it's time to roll up our sleeves and get ready to start cleaning this mess up. And now that we started to see some progress, I imagine now people are going to feel a lot more motivated to get involved with what I like to call the great political cleanup. You know, fixing America, unfucking it, if you will, from what Republicans have done. Let's show MAGA who's boss, exactly. Anyway, folks, if you liked this video, if you want to support it, consider leaving a like and a comment down below. Subscribe and boost the video in the algorithm with the hype if you like. And if you want to know what to comment to let me know you watched this far in the video, what I find very funny, I think it would be a good ongoing joke, would be for you guys to compliment the video and compliment me, but then end it with unsubscribed. Like, compliment the video in some way or whatever, just leave a positive comment, but end it with unsubscribed. You know, I think it's a funny imagery. I can't wait to read the comments and see it. It's going to be funny imagery, I promise. Anyway, folks, if you liked it, you know what to do. I love you. I hope to see you again soon. And as always, I hope you have a good one.